1. The sky was fire when the ship fell. Not the dramatic kind from old war reels, where fighters blaze across stars like comets. No, this was quieter, colder. One burst. One failure. And then silence as Nail's scout vessel lost power and dropped from orbit like a broken promise. Nail woke up half buried in carbon foam, with blood in his mouth and a piece of his seatbelt digging into his ribs. He coughed, rolled over, and stared up at a cracked viewport that showed the dim, purple horizon of Cavan 9, uninhabited moon, former outpost, now graveyard. Except he wasn't dead. Yet. His first full thought wasn't about escape. It was a checklist. Injuries, left shoulder bruised, maybe fractured. Leg stiff but moving. Nothing critical. Suit integrity at 72%. AI assistant, dead. His neural link blinked red, a short circuit fried the core. That meant no external communication, no AI help, no alliance command. He was alone. Until he wasn't. Because someone had left him wrapped in a survival blanket. Not standard issue. A soft, flexible weave that shimmered faintly, like spun glass. Alien tech. And outside the remains of his craft, he saw movement. 2. The figure was kneeling over a dismantled sensor relay, hands glowing faint blue at the fingertips, some kind of built-in interface tech. Tall, limbs narrow but not fragile. Armor faded and scratched, intricate with curled etchings and long, curving shoulder plates. Something about her moved with measured care, like she was used to precision. When he pushed the emergency panel open with a groan, she didn't flinch. Instead, she stood, slowly. They locked eyes. Hers were silver-ringed, sharp as scalpels. Not human. Not coalition. She was Maikari. One of the science cast, he guessed, from the shape of her breathing mask and the delicate tools mounted on her belt. He reached for his belt, but his sidearm was gone. She raised one hand, not threatening. Just a signal. Stay. He froze. After a moment, she stepped forward, holding something small in her other hand. A nutrient pod. Standard survival ration, but wrapped in an alien alloy sleeve. She placed it on the floor between them and backed away. Nail stared at it. "You feeding me now?" he muttered. She didn't answer. 3. They built a shelter together, not out of cooperation, at first, but necessity. Neither ship was salvageable. Storms crawled along the moon's surface, cold and glittering with metallic dust that could strip a hull bare. He started gathering panels from his ship. She added coils and filtration units from hers. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. She gestured. He pointed. And slowly, through action, they began to understand each other. He learned her name the third day. She drew it in dust on a clean stretch of alloy, Tyrion. The letters shimmered with faint power, like her gloves had embedded tech. He replied in kind, Nail. She studied it, mouthed the sound, then nodded once. Acknowledged. 4. Nail discovered something unexpected on the fourth morning. She laughed. It was small, just a soft, broken exhale, when he tried to cook one of her rations and set the whole heater on fire. He flailed, cursed, then fell backwards into a pile of supplies. She stood watching, expression blank, then a quiet noise escaped her, like a wind chime breaking. He blinked. Was that a laugh? She tilted her head, blinked once, then made the same sound again, deliberate, testing it. He grinned. Right. So that's how we're bonding. Mutual culinary disaster. Tyrion just turned and walked away. But he saw her shoulders tremble once, just slightly. 5. At night, the shelter glowed faint blue from the salvaged power core. They slept on opposite sides at first, with gear between them. But over time, the distance shrank. Nail found himself watching her more often. The way she repaired things, always with calm, calculated movements. How her hands trembled only when no one was watching. Tyrion had habits. She polished her tools before sleep. Traced lines in her notebook, drawings, maybe diagrams. She never shared them. But once, when he leaned too close, he saw something that looked like him, stick-like, hunched, but definitely human. Beside it, a sketched version of her. Not holding hands. Just, standing together. He didn't mention it. But the next morning, he left her one of his extra jackets. No explanation. She wore it without a word. 6. The air grew colder by the sixth night. The storms were shifting, pressure spikes off the ridge, which meant they might have to move shelter soon. Tyrion had already started reinforcing the interior. "You always fix things?" he asked her, while helping secure a support beam. She looked up at him. No translator, but something about her expression said yes. "People, too," he added. She paused longer this time. Then, quietly, she held out her hand. Nail took it. The gesture was small. It didn't mean love. It didn't mean peace. But it meant trust. And that was rarer than oxygen. 7. On day 9, a storm caught them outside during a salvage run. Metal shards whipped the air. Nail tackled her into a crater, shielding her with his body. The shards pinged off his backplate, some slicing through his jacket. Pain bloomed across his shoulder, his side. She didn't move at first, just stared at him, wide-eyed, shocked. When the winds died, she pulled him upright with strength that surprised him. Her hands glowed faint green, biotechnology, medical protocol. She pressed them to his wounds, skin to skin. Heat surged through him, not from healing. From the way she looked at him. Not like an enemy. Not like an alien. Just, Nail. 8. Later that night, when they sat beside the heater with half-warm rations and aching bones, Tyrion reached into her pouch and pulled out a small, carved pendant. It looked like glass, but pulsed faintly with inner light. She offered it to him. He hesitated. "What is it?" She touched her chest. Then his. A shared breath. Connection. He took it, slowly. Held it in his palm. "Thank you," he said, voice thick. She didn't respond. But her hand lingered on his for a moment longer than necessary. 9. By the 12th day, they didn't sleep on opposite sides of the shelter anymore. He didn't know who moved first. Maybe it didn't matter. Their conversations were still wordless, but growing richer, gestures, shared touches, eye contact that lingered a little too long. When he told her about Earth, skies that bled orange at dusk, the sound of ocean waves, she touched his face like she was memorizing it. When she showed him her sketches again, this time, they were more detailed. 2 figures. Closer now. Almost touching. 10. They kissed the night the oxygen regulator failed. Not because of drama or desperation, but because they were out of options, and time was slipping. He had seconds before the backup kicked in. Tyrion leaned forward and pressed her mouth to his, not human lips, not quite, but warm and real. His last thought before air surged back was, worth it. 11. On day 15, a signal came through. Garbled. Distant. But real. They were no longer alone. When the transmission ended, Nail looked at her. "They're coming." Tyrion's eyes shone. Not with fear. With sadness. "Do you think they'll separate us?" he asked. She tilted her head. Raised her hand. Touched his chest, then hers. Then drew a line between. "No, not if I can stop it." He smiled, breath hitching. "Me neither." 12. The extraction ship arrived 2 days later. Coalition and Mikari Tech, fused. Awkward alliance in motion. As the shuttle touched down, Nail and Tyrion stood side by side at the edge of the crater. They didn't speak. But when the hatch opened, she slipped her fingers into his. 1. Senya never expected the stars to sing back. Her post was silence personified, a low-orbit satellite over Morven 5, designed to intercept rogue signals, translate enemy code, and report patterns to Central Command. It was the kind of job only two kinds of people volunteered for, those running from war, and those running from themselves. She was both. Her room was the size of a supply crate. Her chair bolted to the floor. Every morning, the lights flickered on in perfect cadence, the filtered air cycled with antiseptic precision. And every night, she sat with her hair pulled back, headphones on, listening to the whispers of the galaxy. Static. Spikes of radiation. Echoes of dead satellites looping automated nonsense. But then, on day 87, something shifted. Not in the data. In the rhythm. Amid the usual digital debris came a pulse. Too slow for beacon code. Too melodic to be emergency Morse. 5 tones. Pause. Then 7 more. Minor key. A melody. Someone was singing. 2. It took her 4 days to isolate the pattern. She triangulated the signal origin, roughly within Sector 54 Gamma, just past the dense asteroid fields once used by the Jatari fleet for cloaking maneuvers. Official records listed the region as silent. No active distress calls, no fleet movements. The melody returned each night. Not spoken. Broadcast. Modulated through low-frequency comms. Run through 6 levels of distortion. It wasn't an accident. Someone was trying to reach her. 3. On day 92, the message changed. This time, embedded in the audio loop, she found text, faint electromagnetic pulses, buried deep in the noise. She fed it into the translator. I don't know if you're listening. But I hope you are. My name is Ulan. I was not made for war. And I am tired of pretending I was. Senya stared at the screen for a long time. A Jatari name. Alien origin confirmed. A deserter. A poet. A trap. 4. She didn't reply. Protocol forbade it. Any two-way communication without clearance was grounds for reassignment. Disciplinary action. Worse. But she kept listening. And the messages kept coming. Some were fragments of thought. I miss the color yellow. We don't have it on my world. Everything is blue or black or white. Do you miss things, too? Some were stories. When I was younger, I carved shapes into the wing of my fighter. Not names. Feelings. Shame. Wonder. Guilt. I wonder if you'd understand them. Some were songs, half-remembered, distorted. And one night, a voice. I imagine you alone, like me. Maybe you listen because it's easier than speaking. Maybe you're scared. So am I. But I'd rather be scared with someone. 5. Senya started typing replies. She never sent them. But she wrote them, quietly, with trembling fingers. I know what it is to feel wrong in your own skin. I was never a soldier either. I just spoke machine better than people. I didn't ask to be stationed here. I just didn't say no. Then another, later. Your voice sounds like nothing I've ever heard before. It scares me how much I wait for it. 6. On day 98, the signal changed. The melody came with heavy distortion. Flashes of what sounded like pain behind the words. They found me. Or maybe I let them. Either way, I won't be able to send much longer. I hope you exist. I hope I'm not speaking into a dying sky. Senya stood frozen, headphones on, every nerve lit with panic. She did something she swore she never would. She replied. 7. I'm here. My name is Senya. You're not alone. Not anymore. The message went out like a ghost slipping between stars. No acknowledgement came that night. Or the next. 8. On day 100, a ship appeared outside the listening post. Small. Old. Jatari markings faded by weather and debris. She scanned it 4 times, no weapons active. Minimal life support. And 1 passenger. Incoming comm request. She stared at the console. Her hand hovered over the deny key. Then moved. Accept. 9. The screen came to life with static. And then a face. Not quite human, high cheekbones, skin with a soft hue of lavender, eyes shaped like crescent moons. Hair braided in loops across the temples. But tired. Scarred. Beautiful in a way that transcended species. Senya, he said. His voice, filtered through the comm, cracked slightly. She nodded. You're real, he whispered. So are you, she replied. They just looked at each other for a long time. 10. Ulan docked manually. Her system resisted it at first, but eventually relented. She met him at the hatch with her pulse in her throat and a sidearm tucked behind her. He didn't bring a weapon. Just a small case. Inside, carved scraps of metal, each etched with symbols she didn't recognize. Memory plates, he explained, setting them down. Stories. Feelings. From my past. Why bring them? Because I thought you should know who I was before you decide what I am. She stared at them, then back at him. You could have sent a virus, she said. Hijacked my station. I didn't want control, he replied. I wanted connection. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer. 11. The days that followed were strange. They cooked together, his rations were somehow worse than hers. They talked in fragments. She told him about her childhood on the orbital cities, her love of quiet. He told her about Jatari poetry, about how they don't rhyme, they resonate, echoing across minds linked through emotion. You don't write it for others, he said. You write it to remember what being alive feels like. She asked him to teach her. And he did. 12. At night, he would sit near the window of the outpost and stare at the stars like they held answers. Do you think they'll come for me? He asked once. She didn't lie. Eventually. Will you let them take me? She looked at him, long and quiet. Not if you stay. He reached for her hand, hesitant. Unsure. She let him hold it. 13. Their first kiss wasn't planned. It came after she fell asleep on the floor near the console, data streaming around her. He draped a blanket over her and whispered something in his language. She opened her eyes. Looked up at him. And kissed him before she could think too much about it. He froze, then pulled her closer like she was a signal he'd been chasing forever. 14. On day 108, an encrypted command came from Central. Subject identified, Jatari deserter. Apprehend on site. Senya deleted it. No hesitation. 15. They spent that night speaking only in touch. Her fingers traced the lines on his neck where old neural cords once fed orders into his brain. His lips brushed the place on her wrist where the 4 scar had never fully faded. There were no more lies. Only choices. 16. On day 110, a patrol ship entered orbit. Coalition colors. They didn't dock, but the message was clear, we're watching. Ulan stood near the viewport, his posture calm, his eyes steady. You can still turn me in, he said. No one would blame you. Senya stepped beside him. I'm done choosing safety over truth. What is the truth? He asked. She didn't answer with words. Just took his face in her hands and kissed him like the stars were about to fall. 17. Ulan didn't leave. The patrol didn't act. And the station kept spinning quietly, tucked in the shadow of a cold world. Each night, new music echoed through their comms. Not from him. From her. She'd started composing, using code, rhythm, pulse. Her own language now. And somewhere, across the galaxy, someone might be listening. But it didn't matter. 1. Levon didn't mean to save a life. He meant to scrap one. It was supposed to be a routine drift run, scavenge the remains of a Jatari wreck tumbling near the Harjen belt, sell off whatever wasn't radioactive, and be back in orbit before the NAV system started throwing tantrums again. But the ship he latched onto had a pulse. Not a literal one, not at first. The hull was mangled, half the core exposed, but tucked inside a maintenance bay was a pod, seamless, matte black, blinking with dim blue light. Inside, curled like something long forgotten and dreaming of fire, was a person. Or something shaped like one. 2. He didn't open the pod immediately. He almost didn't open it at all. Levon was good at ignoring guilt. Good at pretending he wasn't alone out here in a ship held together by chewing gum and sarcasm. He was a hauler, not a rescuer. Not a medic. Not a hero. But the pod hummed at him. Not through speakers or alerts. Through soundless vibrations. Something resonant. Something that knew. When the pod unsealed on its own, there was a moment of pure silence. Then breath. Sharp, mechanical, wrong. The figure inside sat up slowly, eyes wide, glowing faintly. Not Jatari. Not coalition. And not machine. Something in between. 3. They stared at each other for what felt like hours. Levon didn't speak. Neither did the being. Not until his ship lights flickered from the strain, and his auto-repair systems groaned to life. You got a name? He asked. A pause. Then a voice, soft, synthesized, but not robotic. Soren. You alive in there? Another pause. Functioning. Not optimal. Story of my life, Levon muttered. 4. Over the next few days, Soren barely moved. Levon set up a cot near the engine room, closest to the only heat coil still working. Soren seemed to prefer cold, but tolerated the warmth without complaint. They didn't talk much at first. Soren responded to questions with one-word answers, eyes dim. They refused food, but absorbed energy from an auxiliary cable Levon rigged to the wall. Their skin pulsed in waves, biometal shifting like liquid glass. Levon had never seen anything like it. So, he said one night, chewing on synthetic jerky, you always just chill in a pod until someone drags you out of space dust. I was not designed to explain myself. Lucky you, Levon said. I was designed to haul garbage and get shot at. You are damaged. Emotionally or physically? A pause. Both. Levon laughed. For the first time in weeks. 5. On the 9th day, Soren asked about music. It came out of nowhere. Why does your ship hum? They asked. Bad wiring, Levon replied. It repeats. Like a pattern. You mean the static? That's the old jazz loop. Used to keep pirates away. They think I'm nuts. Soren tilted their head. Jazz. Levon pulled up the playlist. The moment the melody started, deep strings, brassy echoes, Soren froze. Not with fear. With recognition. This is, they whispered, not war. That's kind of the point. It feels like, not being alone. Levon didn't say anything. He just turned the volume up. 6. Soren didn't sleep. They powered down sometimes, standing motionless in the corner, but their eyes always flickered open when he moved. Levon got used to it. He started talking more, not because he expected answers, but because silence started feeling too heavy with Soren near. He told stories about his old crew, how he'd walked out of the war because he couldn't stand the sound of screaming anymore. He talked about the stars he'd named after cheap liquor. About how he'd once fallen in love with a woman who thought silence was romantic until she realized he never had anything left to say. Soren didn't interrupt. But sometimes, they would sit closer. Their shoulder would brush his. And it never felt like an accident. 7. The kiss wasn't planned. Levon had no idea if Soren even understood romance. But one night, after patching a coolant leak and nearly dying from a faulty pressure seal, he sat on the floor, hands shaking. Soren knelt beside him. Touched his face, light, curious. And then leaned in. It wasn't heat, or hunger, or lust. It was contact. Deliberate. Careful. Levon didn't stop them. Didn't want to. When they parted, Soren looked confused. Is this comfort? They asked. He swallowed. It's a lot of things. I want more, they said. 8. They learned together. Touch. Closeness. Laughter. Soren discovered teasing, accidentally. They commented that Levon's voice fluctuated when he lied, especially about fear. I don't get scared, he'd said. Soren responded by playing back his screams from earlier. With pitch correction. Levon nearly threw a wrench at them. Instead, he laughed until his ribs hurt. They began sharing space like it was the most natural thing in the galaxy. Levon stopped sleeping alone. 9. But Soren was dying. Not in the human sense. Not immediately. But their core was unstable. The longer they were away from their origin structure, a central AI matrix, now lost, the more they decayed. Their systems would slow. They'd forget. They told him this one morning, sitting by the viewing window. I do not want to forget you, they said. Then don't. It will not be my choice. He didn't answer. He couldn't. 10. On the 50th day, Levon made a choice. He rerouted power from the drive coils. Shut down half the ship's functionality. Redirected everything into a singular preservation tank. A place for Soren. You're going to rest here, he told them. You are sacrificing speed. Safety. I'm choosing you. Soren stared at him, glowing faintly blue in the dark. You will age. I will not. Then you better keep me young, he said with a grin. Their hand cupped his cheek. And he leaned into it like it was the only real thing left. 11. They spent the last week before shutdown dancing through weightless corridors. Levon played jazz. Soren tried to move with rhythm. They failed beautifully. He taught them how to spin. They taught him how to listen. And when their systems began to flicker, they whispered, I remember you, Levon. Even in the dark, I remember. 12. He sealed the chamber with shaking hands. Watched the stasis fog rise. Watched their eyes close. I'll find a way, he said. No response. Just silence. But not the kind he'd feared. The kind filled with memory. 13. Levon resumed drifting. His ship slower. His cabin colder. But every night, he passed the chamber and placed a hand against the glass. You still owe me a dance, he whispered. And somewhere inside, a tiny light pulsed in reply. 1. Jessa hated derelicts. Not because they were dangerous, though they often were, but because they were quiet. The kind of quiet that pressed into your ears like water. The kind of quiet that made you remember every voice you used to hear. She floated through the docking tunnel toward the outer hatch of Station V3 ruin, reading gravity fluctuations off her wrist tablet and muttering complaints to no one. Power at 14%, she said to the air. Great. I swear, if another ventilation unit tries to kill me. Her words dissolved into the static hum of vacuum. This was supposed to be a 2-day mission. Realign the internal grav field, patch the leaks, and go back to Orbital Outpost 9. She was prepared for broken doors, burst pipes, even residual enemy tech. She wasn't prepared for Renix. 2. She found him in the station's lower decks, alive, half-conscious, slumped beside the primary gravity core. The first thing she noticed was his uniform, old, tattered, and marked with the once-feared insignia of the Chazari High Command. The second thing was his eyes, pale gold, wide open, watching her like a cornered animal. Jessa raised her scanner, one foot sliding back instinctively. He didn't move. You armed? She asked. No, he replied, voice cracked and low. And if I were, I would have used it already. Comforting. She didn't lower her scanner. But she didn't leave, either. 3. Renix let her bind his hands, though he could have resisted. She knew that the moment she tried. But he didn't. He just sat on the floor while she finished rerouting gravity access through her own tech kit. You were a strategist, she muttered. I recognize the uniform. Former strategist, he corrected. Still an enemy. He looked at her, long and calm. Not anymore. The war ended. Someone just forgot to tell me. So what, you moved in here like a hermit crab? He offered a faint shrug. No one came to pick me up. I assumed it meant they didn't want to. Fair. 4. The station wasn't stable. Its gravity core pulsed erratically, flipping between low-G and bone-crushing pull every 4 hours. Jessa couldn't fix it alone, not without inside access. And that meant working with the man she'd just zip-tied to a railing. So, reluctantly, she cut him loose. You try anything, she warned, and I'll recycle you into lubricant. Renix blinked. I've missed human metaphors. They're so visceral. I'm an engineer, she said. We don't do subtle. He followed her into the access panel maze like a shadow. 5. They argued immediately. He preferred quiet, clean efficiency. She favored fast and dirty solutions. You're destabilizing the upper ring by pulling core pressure without accounting for coil memory, he said on day 2. Coil memory isn't the issue, she snapped. The redundancy loop's corrupted. I'm bypassing it. He raised an eyebrow. Dangerous. You sound like the AI that used to lecture me when I fixed toilets on a mining rig. He tilted his head, then actually smiled. Did the toilets explode? A little. 6. On the third night, the station dipped into 0G for 6 hours. The artificial gravity had blown a conduit, and the backup coil melted into the wall. They floated together in the control bay, tethered only by magnetic boots and silent frustration. Jessa found herself watching Renix again. Not because he was handsome, though he was, in that strange, alien way. Sharp features, smooth skin, hair braided with tiny rings of circuitry. No, it was the stillness. Like he was always listening for a signal she couldn't hear. You really stayed here this whole time? She asked. Yes. Why? He was silent for a long moment. Because I wasn't ready to face what peace meant. And now? Now I'm facing it. Whether I want to or not. 7. The gravity core stabilized briefly on day 5. Enough to let them breathe normally, eat without suction tubes, and sit across from each other without drifting. They shared a meal. Protein paste. Terrible. She winced. He watched her, curious. You hate it, he said. It tastes like disappointment. He took a bite. Paused. Yes. Very accurate. She laughed. A soft, surprised sound. He blinked. Was that amusement? You're funnier than you look. Thank you. I think. 8. On day 6, Jessa woke to silence. Not the quiet of space, but the wrong kind, total power failure. She scrambled toward the control core, only to find Renix already there, hands deep in the wiring, sleeves rolled up. You broke my station, she shouted. I saved it, he replied. One of your patches failed. I rewired manually. You rewired? You're welcome. She opened her mouth to yell more. Then stopped. He looked exhausted. But proud. 9. They didn't fight as much after that. They still bickered, over coil ratios, grounding cables, wiring aesthetics, but it had an edge of warmth now. They worked well together. Too well, maybe. Because Jessa started noticing how he stood closer. How his voice lowered when he spoke just to her. How he waited for her to eat before he touched his own food. She tried not to think about it. Tried even harder not to feel it. But gravity wasn't just mechanical. It was emotional. And she was drifting. 10. On the 8th night, the station rotated into full orbital light. They stood together in the viewport bay, watching stars spill across the horizon. I used to think the war would end in fire, Jessa said. And it ended in silence, he replied. Do you miss it? No. She looked at him. Then what do you miss? He turned to her. Touch. Her breath caught. You're allowed now, she said, voice low. He stepped closer. Tentative. Not assuming. When he reached for her, she didn't pull away. Their hands touched, hers calloused, his smooth. His skin was warm. 11. The kiss was gentle. More of a question than a statement. But she answered. Not with words. Just closeness. Just breath. 12. They slept side by side after that. Not every night. But often enough. Renix asked about Earth music. She played him old rock ballads through her portable speaker. He laughed at first. Then asked her to repeat one 3 times. The 4th time, he whispered the lyrics with her. 13. On day 10, her comm panel lit up. Coalition check-in. A repair crew was inbound. She didn't tell him right away. Not because she didn't trust him. Because she didn't want it to end. He found out anyway. They're coming, he said, watching the blinking NAV screen. Yeah. They'll arrest me. I could lie. You could, he said softly. But should you? She didn't answer. Instead, she stood beside him. We've got 48 hours. That's not much. Then let's not waste it. 14. The next day, they danced. Not well. She rigged the gravity to a soft spin. Played something slow. He followed her lead. 2 souls who should have been enemies. Orbiting each other like reluctant moons. Finding something neither of them had words for. 15. The ship arrived on schedule. She didn't say goodbye. Neither did he. He turned himself in calmly. No struggle. No regret. Just one last look, like an orbit finally breaking. 16. A month later, she received a data packet. Encrypted. Inside, a message. I studied your gravity stabilizers. But I never understood how you destabilized mine. I hope you're still dancing. Renix. She smiled. Then played the song again. And danced alone. Until she didn't feel alone anymore.